All right, let's jump into another deep dive. This time we are going exploring the secret doctrine.
Ooh, that's a big one.
Yeah, it really is. It's like this massive, complex work of esoteric philosophy that was written, well, way back in 1888 by Helena Blavatsky.
Oh, wow. So this is late 19th century stuff.
It is, yeah. And it draws on all these ancient traditions like, religions, myths, symbols, you name it, especially from Hindu and Egyptian traditions. And Blavatsky, she basically used all of this to try to unveil what she believed was like this hidden wisdom about the universe and humanity's place in it. Where do we fit into this whole grand scheme of things?
I see. So like a secret teaching that's been hidden throughout history, kind of woven into all these different traditions.
Yeah, exactly. And the secret doctrine is definitely known for being a bit dense and complex. It can be pretty tough to wrap your head around, but that's why we're here, right? We're going to focus on some of the most intriguing concepts that really stood out to me, and hopefully we can unpack them together.
Sounds like a plan. I'm ready to dive in.
Great. So, to set the stage, Blavatsky, she was convinced that a lot of people, they just missed the point when it came to ancient symbology.
What do you mean, like they were looking at it the wrong way?
Yeah, kind of. She believed that they were too fixated on the superficial, like the surface level of these symbols and myths, without really diving into the deeper esoteric meaning hidden beneath.
So like missing the forest for the trees, but on like a cosmic scale?
Exactly. It's about seeing beyond the obvious, looking for those hidden layers of meaning. Now, the big question is, why did she feel the need to share these secrets in the first place? Why write a whole book about it?
Right, like why reveal this hidden wisdom to the world?
Well, you have to remember the context. This was the late 1800s, a time when materialism was on the rise, science was making huge leaps forward. And Blavatsky, she saw the world becoming increasingly obsessed with the physical realm, almost to the point of forgetting about its spiritual roots. So she felt compelled to offer a different perspective, a glimpse into this ancient wisdom that she believed held the key to understanding the true nature of reality.
So she was like a countercultural figure, pushing back against the dominant materialistic worldview of her time.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. She was sounding the alarm, saying, hey, there's more to life than meets the eye. Don't get so caught up in the material world that you forget about the spiritual dimension.
And she was pretty vocal about the dangers of neglecting that spiritual side, wasn't she? Didn't she talk about Sadducees?
Yes. She warned about a coming generation of Sadducees, a term she used to describe people who deny the existence of the soul and any spiritual realities. She saw this trend as a sign of a looming spiritual crisis.
So for her, this wasn't just some abstract philosophical debate. It was about the future of humanity, about the direction we were heading in.
Absolutely. Okay, now, one of the things that really drew me into the secret doctrine was this mention of the stanzas of Zen. Have you ever heard of these?
Vaguely they ring a bell, but refresh my memory.
So basically, they're these mysterious ancient verses that Blavatsky quotes throughout the book. She claims that they're from this super old text called the Book of Zen, but here's the thing.
It's like a book within a book, right? Quoting some even older source material.
Exactly. But it gets even weirder. This Book of Zen, it's completely unknown to Western scholars. Like, no one has ever found a copy of it. So it's this huge mystery. Where did these stanzas come from, and are they even authentic?
Wow. Okay, now I see why you're so intrigued. It's like a secret text, a source without a trace.
Right. It makes you wonder where Blavatsky got her hands on these stanzas.
Definitely adds a layer of mystique to the whole thing, doesn't it?
Mm.
But tell me more about the stanzas themselves. What kind of stuff do they talk about?
Okay, so they're written in this symbolic, almost poetic language that can be really difficult to understand. It's like deciphering a code.
So not exactly light reading material.
Not at all. But when you start to piece things together, it's pretty mind-blowing. For example, stanza I, verse 8, it paints this picture of the primordial state of existence, stating, alone, the one form of existence stretched boundless, infinite, causeless, in dreamless sleep, and life pulsated unconscious in universal space.
Whoa, okay, yeah, that's a lot to unpack right there. So who or what is this one form of existence? Is this like God, the creator of everything?
That's a great question, and it's one that has been debated for, ever, but it's not a being in the way we typically think of it.
Okay, so not like a guy with a white beard sitting on a cloud.
Not quite. It's more like a concept, the ultimate reality, the foundation that underlies all phenomena, the essence from which everything arises. Think of it as the source of all being rather than a being itself.
Okay, so maybe not a god, but like the source of all gods, or at least the source of everything we perceive as existing. I'm trying to get a handle on this. Can you give me like an example?
Sure, imagine a giant chunk of quartz. And inside this quartz, there are all these tiny gold particles, so small you can't even see them with the naked eye.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Now, those invisible gold particles, they're what give the quartz its true value.
Right, like the hidden treasure within.
Exactly. So, in the same way, this one form of existence, it's invisible to our ordinary senses, but it's the foundation, the source of everything we experience, the underlying reality that makes everything possible.
Okay, that's a pretty powerful image. So you're saying there's this hidden source, this underlying reality that we can't perceive directly, but is ultimately responsible for everything we see and experience in the world.
Exactly. It's like the universe is a giant tapestry, and this one form of existence is the thread that holds it all together. And this was a pretty radical concept back in the late 1800s, especially with all that emphasis on materialism and science.
Yeah, I can imagine. Blavatsky was presenting a pretty different perspective.
Yeah, she was basically saying, hey, don't forget about the spiritual dimension. There's more to reality than what you can see and touch. And this idea of unseen forces, it leads us to another really interesting concept in the secret doctrine. The idea of sevenfold divisions in the cosmos, and even within us humans. Like, why is the number 7 so significant?
Oh, that's interesting. 7 does seem to pop up a lot in esoteric traditions.
It does, doesn't it? And in the secret doctrine, it represents different levels of existence, different stages of evolution, all sorts of things. For example, Blavatsky talks about the 7 globes of our planetary chain.
Okay, so we're not just talking about the 7 planets in our solar system.
Nope. This is about something much bigger, a spiritual evolution that's happening across multiple globes, all linked together in this cyclical journey. Our current Earth, according to this teaching, it's just one of these globes, the 4th one to be exact. And it's a turning point where evolution shifts from descending into matter to ascending towards spirit.
Wait, so are you saying that there's life on these other globes even if we can't see it?
That's exactly what the secret doctrine suggests.
Wow. Okay, so we're talking about a much bigger picture here, a cosmic evolution that spans multiple worlds. And what about this turning point you mentioned? What happens after we ascend towards spirit?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. But before we dive into that, let's talk about one of the most fascinating parts of this whole planetary chain idea. The moon.
The moon? What's so special about it?
Well, Blavatsky calls it a dead yet living body. She suggests that the moon has actually transferred its life essence to Earth, leaving behind a shell that, while appearing lifeless, still influences us in all sorts of ways.
Wait, hold on. So the moon is like our cosmic parent, but one that might be a bit, clingy.
You could say that. It's a really thought-provoking concept. Like, what if the moon, even though it seems dead and lifeless, is still affecting us on some deep, energetic level?
That makes you wonder about the interconnectedness of everything in the universe, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Nothing is truly isolated.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another key idea in the secret doctrine, the cyclical nature of existence. Have you ever heard of manvantaras and pralayas?
Not really. Those are new ones.
So basically, a manvantara is a period of activity, of creation and manifestation. And a pralaya is a period of rest, of dissolution and withdrawal. Think of it like the universe is breathing in and out, creation and destruction, forever cycling.
Okay, so instead of a universe that's just running down like a clock, Blavatsky is presenting this idea of an eternal cosmos that goes through these cycles of creation and destruction.
Exactly. It's not a one-way trip to cosmic oblivion, but a never-ending dance of creation and dissolution, a constant process of becoming and unbecoming. And this dance applies not just to the universe as a whole, but to humanity as well, to our evolution and the journey of our souls.
So we're all part of this cosmic dance.
We are. And understanding that dance, the rhythms and the cycles, it can give us a whole new perspective on our place in the universe and the purpose of our lives. But one of the most controversial parts of the secret doctrine is Blavatsky's claim that humanity, we didn't actually evolve from apes.
Whoa, hold on. That goes against everything we've been taught about evolution.
It does, right. But it's important to understand the distinction between Darwinian evolution and the esoteric view that Blavatsky presents.
Okay, so what's the difference?
Well, Darwin focused on physical adaptations over time, like how species change over generations through natural selection. But Blavatsky, she adds another layer, a spiritual dimension to evolution. She talks about the evolution of consciousness, which she says precedes and informs physical evolution. So it's not just about the physical changes, but about the soul's journey through different forms.
So there's this whole spiritual evolution happening alongside the physical one. That's fascinating.
Right, and it completely changes how we think about the process of evolution. So if humans didn't evolve from apes, where did we come from?
Yeah, that's a good question. Fill me in.
Well, the Secret Doctrine introduces this concept of root races, distinct stages of human evolution. And it suggests that there were earlier root races with forms and capabilities that were very different from our own. We're talking about beings that were more etheric, more connected to the spiritual realms, beings that possessed abilities that we can only dream of.
Okay, now we're getting into some really interesting territory. Tell me more about these earlier root races. What were they like? And what happened to them?
Well, each root race had its own unique characteristics and its own role to play in the grand scheme of things. For example, the second root race, the sweat-born as they're called, they were still more etheric than us, but they were starting to develop more physical forms. And then there's the third root race. They're particularly fascinating because they were initially androgynous beings, meaning they had both male and female aspects. And guess what?
Okay, androgynous beings. What else?
They also had a third eye.
A third eye. Like literally another eye.
Yes. Blavatsky describes it as being located at the back of the head, and it's believed to have allowed for a different kind of perception, maybe a kind of clairvoyance or spiritual vision that was lost as humanity became more focused on the material world.
Wow, that's wild. So it's almost like we traded in our spiritual superpowers for a more grounded existence.
Yeah, kind of like that. But before we get too deep into that rabbit hole, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the beings who play a role in all of this. The Secret Doctrine mentions these spiritual beings like Dian Chohans, divas, and elementals who seem to be involved in the unfolding of the universe. What do you make of these beings?
Honestly, when I hear about beings like that, I always picture, angels with harps or demons with pitchforks. Is that what we're talking about here?
Not exactly. These beings are less about the typical images we have of angels and demons, and more about conscious forces that guide and sustain the processes of nature. Think of them as highly evolved intelligences working behind the scenes, like cosmic gardeners tending to the garden of creation.
Okay, so they're like the caretakers of the universe, making sure everything runs smoothly.
That's a good way to put it. And they each have their own specific roles to play, operating according to these cosmic laws that govern everything in the universe. But if these beings are running the show, orchestrating everything, it makes you wonder, what does that mean for our free will? Do we really have any control over our choices, or are we just puppets dancing to their tune?
That's a big question. Do we have free will, or are we just following a script? I'm not sure I have an answer to that one.
It's a tough one, for sure. And it's one that the Secret Doctrine explores in depth, grappling with the interplay between destiny and free will, between the forces that shape our lives and the choices we make within those constraints. But before we dive into that, there's another fascinating concept related to these beings that I think you'll find really intriguing.
Okay, I'm all ears.
So imagine this. The Secret Doctrine actually mentions a group of beings called the Lords of the Flame, who chose not to participate in the creation of the material world.
Wait, what? Beings who said no to creating. Why would they do that? It's like being offered a job at the Cosmic Construction Company and saying, nah, I'm good.
It is, isn't it? And it raises all sorts of questions. The book suggests that these beings were considered too pure, too detached from the material realm to get involved in its creation. Maybe it's hinting at the idea that there are levels of spiritual evolution that are so advanced that they transcend the need to participate in the denser, messier aspects of existence.
So they're like beyond the whole material realm, existing on some higher plane of existence where creation and destruction just don't apply anymore.
Yeah, maybe something like that. It's a really fascinating idea. But if some beings chose not to create, does that mean we have free will? Are we the ones who are ultimately responsible for the state of the world and for our own individual lives?
Ooh, that's a big one.
It is, right. And that brings us to the concept of karma, which is central to the Secret Doctrine. It's all about cause and effect applied to the moral and spiritual realms. Every action we take, every choice we make, generates a corresponding reaction that influences our future experiences.
So it's less about a divine judge keeping score and more about the natural consequences of our actions rippling through our lives.
Exactly. And this ties directly into the concept of reincarnation, which is another big theme in the Secret Doctrine. It suggests that we live multiple lives, not as random rebirths, but as a process guided by the consequences of our past actions.
Okay, so we're carrying the effects of our choices, both positive and negative, from one life to the next, like a cosmic resume that keeps getting updated with each new experience.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. It's like a continuous thread of consciousness, a spiritual evolution unfolding over many lifetimes, each one building on the experiences of the previous ones. But this raises another interesting question. What happens to our personalities and memories between lives? Does it all just get wiped clean?
Right, like do we just start from scratch each time, or do we carry something with us from our past lives?
Well, the Secret Doctrine suggests that the same spiritual individuality, the core essence of who we are, can incarnate into many different personalities across lifetimes. It's like an actor playing different roles, each with its own unique experiences and memories, but the actor remains the same.
So there's this core essence, a soul that remains constant while the outer personality changes with each lifetime. It's kind of like those Russian nesting dolls, where you open one doll and there's a smaller doll inside and then another one inside that and so on. The smallest doll in the center, that's the unchanging soul. And each larger doll is a different personality from a different life.
I love that analogy. It really captures the idea perfectly. And it brings us back to the question you asked earlier about free will. If we're carrying the weight of past actions into each new life, it might seem like we're trapped in this predetermined loop. But the Secret Doctrine suggests that free will plays a crucial role within this karmic framework. It's about understanding how these two forces interact and shape our lives.
So it's not a case of destiny versus free will, but rather how these two forces work together to create the tapestry of our lives.
Exactly. It's not a fixed script, but rather a dynamic interplay between the consequences of our past choices and the power of our present intentions. And that can be really empowering, It means we're not just passive players in this cosmic drama, but active participants who can influence the unfolding of our own lives. We have the power to choose, to act, and to create new karma that can shift our trajectory.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. It means we're not just victims of circumstance, but co-creators of our reality.
Exactly. And that's just one of the many mind-blowing ideas we'll be exploring as we dive deeper into the Secret Doctrine.
I can't wait to hear more. So we've talked about these root races, these distinct stages of human evolution that Blavatsky lays out in The Secret Doctrine. And it's like, we're not just talking about physical evolution, right? It's more like the evolution of consciousness, the soul's journey through different forms.
Exactly. And that journey takes us through some pretty wild territory, especially when we start talking about the earlier root races, the ones that existed before our current humanity.
Yeah, tell me more about these earlier root races. Especially those with the third eye and the whole androgynous thing. Those are the details that really stick with you.
I know, right? It's like, whoa, did we really used to be like that? So to get a clearer picture, it helps to think of human evolution not as a straight line from primitive to advanced, but more like a spiral. Each cycle builds on the previous one.
Oh, like a spiral staircase, each step leading to a higher level of understanding.
Exactly. So the first root race, they were like shpordos almost, cast by divine beings. They lacked the physical density and self-awareness that we have today.
So kind of like ethereal prototypes of humans.
Yeah, exactly. Then you have the second root race, the sweatborn, as Blavatsky calls them. They were still pretty etheric, but they started to develop more physical forms.
Okay, started to solidify a bit more.
Right, becoming more grounded in the material world. And then comes the third root race, and this is where things get really wild.
Okay, hit me with it. What's so special about the third root race?
Well, they started out as androgynous beings, meaning they had both male and female aspects.
So like, no genders yet, just this unified being.
Yeah, exactly. And get this, they had a third eye.
Whoa, okay, I remember you mentioned that before. Like literally another eye on their head.
Yep. Blavatsky describes it as being located at the back of the head. It's thought to have given them some kind of higher perception, maybe even clairvoyance or spiritual vision, something we've lost touch with over time.
I wonder what it would be like to have that kind of vision, to perceive things beyond the physical realm.
Right. It's fascinating to think about. But as the third root race continued to evolve, they gradually descended further into matter, becoming less etheric, more physical. They transitioned into separate sexes and lost some of their spiritual faculties, like that third eye.
So it's like they traded in some of their spiritual abilities for a more grounded physical existence.
Yeah, you could say that. It's like they made a choice to experience the world in a different way, more focused on the material realm. And that leads us to the fourth root race, the Atlanteans, who are often portrayed as this super advanced civilization with technology and powers we can only dream of.
The Atlanteans. Now, those are some legendary beings, right?
Yeah.
Were they really as advanced as people say?
According to the secret doctrine, yeah, they were pretty incredible. They had flying machines, advanced technology, even psychic powers. But here's the thing.
There's always a catch, right?
Right. They let it all go to their heads. They became obsessed with power and materialism, neglecting their spiritual development. They started misusing their powers, leading to all sorts of conflicts and eventually to their downfall.
Okay, so they had it all, but they messed it up. Classic cautionary tale. Yeah. So is this where the whole myth of Atlantis sinking beneath the waves comes from?
Well, the story of Atlantis has been around for centuries, and the occult doctrine certainly adds fuel to the fire. Blavatsky suggests that there's truth to the legend, that the Atlanteans were a real civilization that met a tragic end. Whether she based this on ancient myths or some other source of knowledge, we can't say for sure. But what's important is the lesson we can learn from their story. It's a reminder that no matter how advanced we become technologically, no matter how much power we acquire, if we neglect our spiritual development, we're setting ourselves up for a fall.
Yeah, that's a powerful message, especially for us today, with technology evolving so rapidly. So if the Atlanteans represent the fourth root race, where do we fit into all of this? Tell me about the fifth root race, the one we belong to.
Well, according to the secret doctrine, we are currently in the fifth root race, which emerged after the fall of Atlantis. Our root race is all about intellectual development, science, reason, and exploration of the material world.
So we're the thinkers, the builders, the ones who are trying to understand the world through logic and experimentation.
That's us. But it's interesting, right? Because Blavatsky criticizes materialism, yet she describes our root race as being focused on the material world. It seems like a contradiction.
It does, yeah. So how do we reconcile those two ideas?
Well, it's not so much about condemning the exploration of the material world, but about recognizing its limitations. Blavatsky's point is that we need balance. We need to balance our intellectual pursuits with spiritual understanding. We can't neglect our inner world in our quest to understand the outer world.
So it's not about rejecting science or technology, but about integrating them with a deeper understanding of who we are and our place in the universe.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that both the material and the spiritual are essential parts of the human experience. And true evolution, true progress, involves weaving those two strands together, creating a tapestry that encompasses both the seen and the unseen, the material and the spiritual.
That's a beautiful image. And it makes a lot of sense. We're not just minds, we're also souls. And we need to nurture both aspects of ourselves to truly thrive. So what happens next? What's the next step in this evolutionary journey?
Well, the secret doctrine suggests that humanity is on the cusp of a major evolutionary leap, a transition to a new level of consciousness that will usher in a sixth root race.
Ooh, okay, now we're getting into some uncharted territory.
Yeah.
A sixth root race. What will they be like? Will they have superpowers? Will they finally figure out how to achieve world peace?
Well, the book doesn't give us specifics, but it hints that this new root race will be marked by greater spiritual awareness, deeper understanding of interconnectedness, and a more harmonious relationship with nature.
That sounds pretty utopian.
Yeah.
But what about those of us living now? Do we just miss out on all the fun?
Not necessarily. The transition to a new root race isn't like flipping a switch. It's a gradual process. And individuals within our current root race who are actively working on their spiritual development, cultivating compassion and wisdom, they can contribute to the emergence of this new consciousness.
So we're not just passive bystanders waiting for evolution to happen. We can actually participate in shaping the future of humanity.
Exactly. It's like we're all part of this giant evolutionary experiment, and the choices we make, both individually and collectively, they influence the outcome.
That's both exciting and a little daunting, isn't it? Knowing that we have a role to play in the evolution of consciousness.
It is, but it's also incredibly empowering. It means we have a responsibility to make wise choices, to act in ways that align with our highest aspirations, and to contribute to the creation of a better world. But there's one more piece of this puzzle that we need to address before we wrap up our exploration of root races. It's one of Blavatsky's most controversial claims, and it has to do with the idea of devolution.
Devolution. Okay, now I'm really curious. What's that all about?
So, you know how we've been talking about evolution as this upward spiral, a progression towards greater complexity and spiritual awareness?
Yeah, the spiral staircase image.
Right. Well, Blavatsky throws a curveball by suggesting that some species, including certain ape-like forms, might have actually devolved from early humans.
Wait, so you're saying that instead of evolving from apes, some apes might have actually devolved from humans? That seems to go against everything we've learned about evolution.
It does, right. But remember, Blavatsky is presenting an alternative view of evolution, one that takes into account both the physical and the spiritual. So while physical forms might devolve over time, maybe due to environmental pressures or other factors, the spiritual essence, the soul, continues to evolve.
So it's like, even though some branches of the evolutionary tree might seem to be going backwards, the overall movement is still towards greater spiritual awareness.
Exactly. The secret doctrine suggests that evolution isn't a simple linear process. It's more like a complex dance, with movements forward and backward, with unexpected turns and branching paths.
Like a cosmic ballet with all these different dancers moving in different directions, but ultimately contributing to a grand unified performance.
I love that. It's a beautiful way to capture the complexity and wonder of evolution, as Blavatsky describes it. And within this dance, the soul continues its journey, gathering experiences, learning lessons, and ultimately evolving towards a greater understanding of itself and the universe.
Wow, it's a lot to take in, but it's also incredibly inspiring. It makes you realize that there's so much more to evolution than we typically imagine, that there are these hidden depths and mysteries that are just waiting to be explored.
Absolutely. And that's what makes the secret doctrine so compelling. It challenges our assumptions, expands our perspective, and invites us to consider possibilities that we might never have thought of before.
It's like Blavatsky's throwing open the doors to a whole new way of understanding the universe and our place in it.
Exactly. And that's just one of the many mind-blowing ideas we'll be exploring as we dive deeper into the secret doctrine.
Okay, so what other fascinating concepts does the secret doctrine have in store for us?
Well, you know how we've been talking about the origins of humanity and the whole root races thing? Well, get ready for another twist, because the secret doctrine proposes a pretty radical idea about how humanity came to be. It challenges the traditional narrative of a single origin story, like the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve.
Oh, so no Adam and Eve. What's the alternative?
Instead of one starting point for humanity, Blavatsky suggests multiple points of creation, an idea called polygenesis. Picture this. Humanity springing forth like sparks all across the globe, each group with its own unique origin and evolutionary path. That's the concept we're going to be diving into.
Wow, so multiple Gardens of Eden. That's definitely a different take on things. I'm intrigued. Let's explore this further. So multiple Gardens of Eden, huh? That definitely shakes things up a bit. I'm curious, how does this whole multiple origins thing work? Where did all these different human groups come from?
Well, according to the secret doctrine, these different human groups weren't just randomly popping up all over the place. Blavatsky suggests they were, you could say, seeded by divine progenitors.
Divine progenitors. Like spiritual beings who were kind of like cosmic gardeners, planting the seeds of humanity across the globe.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. These progenitors, or root races, as Blavatsky calls them, they played a key role in guiding the evolution of humanity, establishing the foundations for the different lineages that exist today. And it's not just about physical differences, like skin color or hair texture. We're talking about fundamental differences in the spiritual and energetic makeup of these groups.
Okay, so it's like each group has its own unique spiritual fingerprint, its own vibrational signature. That's fascinating. So are you saying that some groups are more spiritually advanced than others?
Well, Blavatsky was definitely a product of her time, and some of her views on race and evolution, they haven't exactly aged well. But I think it's important to approach her work with a critical eye, separating the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. And when we do that, I think there's still a lot of valuable insight to be gained from the secret doctrine. For example, she emphasizes the importance of diversity, how it was woven into the fabric of creation from the very beginning. It wasn't a mistake, it was intentional.
So instead of seeing differences as something to be feared or erased, it's about recognizing the unique gifts and contributions that each group brings to the table.
Exactly. It's about understanding that we're all interconnected, part of the same human family, despite our outward differences. And that's a message that seems more important now than ever, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. We live in a world that's increasingly polarized, where differences are often used to divide us rather than unite us. So yeah, I think Blavatsky's emphasis on diversity and interconnectedness is a powerful reminder that we need to move beyond our superficial differences and recognize our shared humanity. But okay, let's dive back into the whole root races thing. How does this polygenetic origin of humanity, with all these different groups springing up in different places, how does that fit into the whole root race schema?
Well, think of it this way. Each root race, it had its own unique characteristics, its own set of challenges and triumphs, and its own role to play in this grand evolutionary drama. For example, the third root race, with their androgynous nature and the third eye, they represent a time when humanity was more spiritually attuned, more connected to the unseen realms. And then you have the fourth root race, the Atlanteans, who represent a shift toward a more material focus with all its benefits and pitfalls.
And our current root race, the fifth, we seem to be grappling with the consequences of that material focus, trying to figure out how to balance our technological advancements with our spiritual development. Like, we've created all this amazing technology, but we haven't quite figured out how to use it wisely.
Right. It's like we've given a bunch of toddlers the keys to the spaceship. We have all this power at our fingertips, but we're still figuring out how to be responsible with it.
Ooh, okay. I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? What's the next step in this evolutionary journey?
Well, Blavatsky suggests that humanity is on the cusp of a major evolutionary leap, a transition to a new level of consciousness that will usher in a sixth root race.
A sixth root race. What will they be like? Will they finally have it all figured out?
That's the big question, isn't it? While the secret doctrine doesn't give us a lot of specifics, it hints that this new root race will be characterized by greater spiritual awareness, a deeper understanding of interconnectedness, and a more harmonious relationship with nature.
Okay, that sounds pretty amazing. But how do we get there from here?
Yeah.
How do we make this evolutionary leap?
That's the million-dollar question, right? Blavatsky, she emphasizes the importance of individual effort. It's not about waiting for some external savior or miraculous event. It's about each of us taking responsibility for our own spiritual development, about doing the inner work, cultivating wisdom, compassion, and self-awareness.
So it's not about sitting around hoping for the best. It's about rolling up our sleeves and doing the work, both on ourselves and in the world.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're not just passive bystanders in this grand evolutionary play. We're active participants, co-creators of our reality, and the choices we make, both individually and collectively, they matter. They shape the future of humanity.
That's both empowering and a little bit terrifying, isn't it? Knowing that we have that much power.
It is, but it's also incredibly exciting. Because it means we have the potential to create something truly amazing, a world where humanity has transcended its limitations and achieved a higher level of consciousness, a world that's more just, more compassionate, and more harmonious. And that's a vision worth striving for, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It gives me hope, knowing that we have a role to play in creating that future.
Me too. And even though the secret doctrine can be challenging at times, even a little bit overwhelming with all its complex ideas and concepts, it ultimately offers a message of hope, a vision of a future where humanity is awakened to its true potential. It's a reminder that we're not just physical beings, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And that experience, it's full of challenges and triumphs, of joys and sorrows, of mysteries and revelations. It's a journey of discovery, a grand adventure that's unfolding right here, right now.
Beautifully said. I think that's a perfect note to end on.
I agree. So to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the secret doctrine. It's been a wild ride, exploring ancient wisdom, cosmic mysteries, and the vast possibilities of human evolution. We've covered a lot of ground, from the stanzas of Jen to the cyclical nature of existence, from the mysteries of the moon to the potential for a sixth root race. It's a lot to take in, so don't be afraid to revisit the ideas that resonated with you, to explore the secret doctrine for yourself, and to see what other insights you might uncover. And remember, the journey itself is just as important as the destination. It's about embracing the unknown, asking questions, and staying curious.
And if this exploration leaves you with one question, let it be this. If the universe and our place in it are far more complex and mysterious than we typically imagine, what possibilities does that open up for our understanding of ourselves and our potential? What if we're capable of so much more than we realize?
That's a great question to ponder. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the mysteries of existence.
Happy exploring.